There's something special about finishing a video game that you love. If you're anything like me, you just sit back during the credits trying to soak it all in. You know you just experienced something unforgettable, and you know you'll never get to experience it again for the first time. And honestly, that is a painful realization, at least it is to me. It's why people always say they wish they could erase their memories of a favorite movie, show, or game. We desperately want to feel that magic again. That's exactly how I felt when I completed Hollow Knight for the first time, and I know I am not alone in that feeling. Just to recap from a previous video, I didn't fully play Hollow Knight until 2021, so I knew nothing of its humble beginnings as a game jam game turned into a Kickstarter project. All I knew when I finished Hollow Knight was that I desperately wanted a sequel, or at least a new Team Cherry game of some kind. And then, I discovered Silksong and fell victim to the clown disease that ravaged the community until recently, when the game was finally revealed in full with a release date. To say I was excited would be an understatement.
Oh my god!
While I hadn't been waiting as long as the rest of the community, I still had ample time to wonder, what would a sequel to Hollow Knight be like? And over the years, the expectations for the community grew to an astronomical degree. The build-up reminded me of Elden Ring, actually. That game felt like it would never release, and the longer it took, the higher the anticipation grew. When it was coming out, there was just no possible way that it could live up to the hype. And yet, it did, somehow. Silksong found itself in the same position, but with the extra burden of being a direct sequel. Because here's the thing, Hollow Knight wasn't just good, it was lightning in a bottle. People connected to it in wildly different ways. Some loved its simple but tight, challenging combat, others got lost in the large map. Some were drawn to its lore and its mysteries, unraveling the history of Hallownest piece by piece. And obviously a lot of us connected with all those things to varying degrees. Personally, I connected most to the emotion that the game evoked. I'm not going to pretend like I understood the story when I played it for the first time, but the game still managed to evoke these deep and powerful feelings of sorrow and wonder and intrigue. The City of Tears is one of my favorite locations in all of gaming because of the way the music, the scenery, and the story come together to manifest these feelings within me. But again, that's just me. Millions of people loved Hollow Knight for many different reasons. So how could Silksong possibly succeed? How do you follow up a game that meant so many different things to so many people? And the answer is that you can't. Not perfectly. No sequel to something this beloved can make all fans of the original happy. Some players are going to miss the night. Some are going to find Hornet too fast or just too different overall. Some will want Farloom to feel exactly like Hallownest, while others will demand the opposite. It's just impossible to please everyone. And that's the impossible task at the heart of Silksong. So many people were excited about this game, but the unfortunate reality is that many of these people would be disappointed regardless of what kind of game Team Cherry released. But here's what I will say about Team Cherry. They clearly had a very specific vision about the sequel that they wanted to create, and they saw that vision through to the end, for better or worse. And honestly, I respect them a ton for that. Of course, it's easy for me to say that because, spoiler alert, I love Silksong, although not necessarily for the reasons that I expected going into it. Before I dive into the specifics, I should give you a little background so you understand where I'm coming from. Before Silksong ever came out, I spent a lot of time with Hollow Knight, doing speedruns, challenge runs, and randomizers. All of that time naturally gave me a comfort level with the mechanics that a lot of other casual players probably don't have. One of my biggest worries actually going into Silksong was that the game might feel too easy for me, especially if Team Cherry decided to tune it more towards accessibility for new players. And this would be a very common approach that is taken by, AAA developers who are really trying to cater their games to a very, very wide audience. They don't want to make a sequel that they want to make a sequel that builds off of the first one. That's definitely true, but they also don't want to alienate potential new players. Well, if you follow the general reactions to Silksong, you will know that this is not what happened with Team Cherry. Silksong is tough. Many players have found themselves hitting walls, struggling with bosses or platforming challenges. Some of the platforming sections in this game, especially near the end, are reminiscent of Hollow Knight's Path of Pain, except these sections are required. And here's where my experience shaped my perspective. I didn't face these roadblocks, at least not to the degree that some players have, but I still felt the pressure of the game. Silksong constantly demanded my attention. I couldn't just turn off my brain and play on autopilot. I had to truly engage with the game to conquer its challenges. For me, again, this is me personally, Silksong struck a very sweet spot with its difficulty. It was difficult enough to keep me engaged without ever tipping into frustration. For the most part.
No, 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 no. Wait. Wait.
That said, I want to be very careful here. I do not think that means this game is perfectly balanced in some universal way. It was just balanced enough for me. My hours of practice with Hollow Knight made that possible. For players coming in fresh, or let's say you just played the original game, once, like most people probably did, Silksong can feel overwhelming, unfair, and almost just outright mean at times. Like the developers were just going out of their way to make things, kind of difficult or annoying. And I think that's important to acknowledge. This game's difficulty curve is definitely not a one-size-fits-all. It really did work for me specifically, but there is zero doubt and there's zero complaints from me that other people feel differently. It's completely obvious why other people would feel differently. With that said, there is one thing I particularly despise in regards to this game's difficulty. Let me illustrate it for you. Yo, what's up? It's your boy Hornet Silksong, and I'm just here in Silksong playing Silksong. Now check this out. I'm gonna walk over here and I'm just gonna touch this thing. I do not think that contact damage on its own is a bad mechanic, and I actually do think it works very well for these games. But with that said, I truly cannot understand why so many enemies and obstacles in this game do too massive damage just for touching them. If an enemy has a large spike on its back, it makes sense, all right? I visually understand why running into that enemy would be more damaging. But then you can just run into basically anything in this game and lose 2 masks, and I think that is just a bit excessive, and it also just doesn't really make sense. The environmental hazards bother me a bit less, but I still found myself being a bit annoyed about losing 2 masks after walking into a cloud of steam in the Citadel. I think if most contact damage was reduced to 1 mask, with some exceptions, it would go a long way in improving this game's balancing. The other big point of contention in this game is its economy, and I am a bit conflicted on this. If you've watched any of my videos on RPGs, you will know that I don't like when an economy is essentially meaningless, as we gain currency so fast that we can buy everything without much effort. So I appreciate that Silksong tries to give you a more limited economy that forces you to save up and choose what to buy rather than buying everything in a shop all at once. But with that said, I do think it leans a little bit too far in that direction. Now, I rarely lost my currency to death in this game, luckily, and I still found myself having a lot of trouble gaining the necessary amount of rosaries to purchase maps, tools, charms, and so on. And going for 100% completion? Well, that just turned into a grind. My last couple hours were not spent exploring the map or fighting bosses. They were spent farming rosaries just to buy the final few tools I needed. And that's just not the most fun way to wrap up a playthrough. So if you're already struggling with this game's difficulty, the punishing economy just piles on, and I get why Team Cherry went this route, and honestly, I would rather have this than a meaningless currency system, but it does feel like an area ripe for some tweaking. And given that they've already adjusted the numbers a bit post-release, I think this will be changed a little bit more over time, over the game's life. Now, there are certainly more personal gripes I have with this game, but enough with the negatives. I want to talk about what this game does well, because, wow, it does so much that I love. First of all, as you would expect if you played Hollow Knight, the world here is absolutely beautiful. The visual identity from the original game carries over seamlessly here, and yet the Kingdom of Farloom manages to feel distinct from Hallownest. It's just such a pretty game to look at, and it's a prime example of how art style and direction is so much more important than just raw graphical fidelity. These worlds are memorable. These are worlds that will stick with us, and they are artistically handcrafted. It's not just, this looks like outside, just a place I could go in real life. These are unique. They're fantasy kingdoms, and they really, speak to our imaginations, and they're just so fun to explore and look at, and man, it is just a wonderful world. It's full of hidden paths, bosses, charming NPCs, and much more. This world is massive, and I love exploring it. Mostly. And of course, you can't bring up Silksong's world without mentioning the soundtrack. Christopher Larkin once again knocked it out of the park. His music is such an essential part of why these games work as well as they do. Every track of this soundtrack feels perfectly tailored to its environment, and it's never distracting, but it always enhances the mood. It's hard to imagine these spaces without hearing the music in your head. And just like Hollow Knight, Silksong gave me plenty of songs that I'll be listening to on loop while I work. Right now, my favorite is Choral Chambers. It nails the Citadel's tone. It's somber, majestic, and haunting, and to me, it's this game's equivalent of the City of Tears from the first game. Now, up to this point, I've been talking about the world, the art, and the music, and all of that is incredible. Those are the things that really connected me to Hollow Knight. But here's the thing. As much as I enjoyed those parts of Silksong, I didn't connect with them in quite the same way. With Hollow Knight, I had these moments where the game hit me with this overwhelming sense of wonder or sorrow, moments like stepping into the City of Tears for the first time. Now, Silksong definitely stirred emotions with its location and soundtrack, but nothing ever quite reached that same emotional high for me. And honestly, that surprised me. I thought that was going to be the reason that I love Silksong. So when that deep connection didn't happen, I felt a little disappointed. But I did connect deeply with this game in a different way. The thing that completely won me over in Silksong wasn't the world or even the music. It was Hornet. Hornet controls like an absolute dream in this game, and as her moveset expands, she gets exponentially more fun. Quick side note about this game, and maybe Metroidvanias in general, I haven't played many of them, but I think it's hilarious that like some of the power-ups, some of them are like, wow, this is a true expansion of my abilities, and it makes sense that I have to find a power-up, to actually access these crazy abilities. But then you get a power-up that operates kind of like this. Yo, what up? It's your boy Silksong, and I'm here playing Silksong again, and I'm about to pick up this ancient ancestral ability. Now, you gotta wonder, this ancient civilization full of these silk powers. What ability am I gonna gain here? What's gonna happen? Let's figure out. Okay, so I can sprint now. I guess I couldn't do that before. But seriously, playing as Hornet is my favorite part of this game, and I'll say it. I think I actually may prefer the diagonal down slash to the Knight's direct down slash. I clicked with her movement instantly, and I actually never even changed crests in my original playthrough. I loved how the game required me to make the most of Hornet's moveset to conquer its platforming challenges, its bosses, and just everything that the world had to offer. It was this huge playground to really test out her skills, and I just had so much fun controlling her, to the point where I'm a little bit worried to go back to Hollow Knight and just see how slow the Knight is in comparison. So where I fell in love with Hollow Knight for its emotionally charged world, I fell in love with Silksong for its fluid and fast-paced gameplay. Speedrunning Silksong has been a blast so far. I managed to get my any percent time down to 1 hour and 37 minutes, which felt pretty freaking great. And then of course, I had to go watch world record runs to remind myself that I am garbage, and I always will be. I will be completely honest. When the credits rolled for Silksong, I didn't feel that same gut punch feeling that I did when I finished Hollow Knight for the first time. And for a moment, I was disappointed that the sequel hadn't hit me in the same way. But looking back, that was never really going to be possible. Hollow Knight is one of those once-in-a-lifetime experiences, and Team Cherry couldn't recreate that exact feeling. And to their credit, they didn't really try. Instead, they gave us a sequel that forges its own identity, one that plays to Hornet's strengths and builds something distinct. Silksong will never replace Hollow Knight in my heart, and it was never meant to. But the more times I've played it, I've already grown to love it even more for what it is. It's a beautiful, challenging, and endlessly fun game that stands proudly on its own. And you know what? That is good enough for me. And also, this game costs $20 freaking. Now that Silksong is out and it's released and we've all played it, I guess we can retire the clown costumes now, and that just seems so weird. This era of pure insanity is over, and I think part of me is actually going to really miss, going to like a Nintendo Direct or whatever video game event and just looking at the chat and just seeing Skong spammed over and over. There is a part of me that is going to miss that. Part of me just wishes there was like another like lost video game that I could kind of obsess over in the way that I did with Silksong, and I just want something that really keeps my attention, that I can always look forward to meaninglessly at basically every video game award show, and it's right behind me, isn't it?